I graduated 15 years ago, and I hadn't thought about most of those people in probably 14 of them. The reunion email sat in my inbox for 2 weeks before I even opened it. When I finally did, I almost deleted it. Almost. But there was something about the way it was worded that made me pause. It didn't sound like the usual, cheerful alumni office template. It was personal. It mentioned specific people I'd actually known. It mentioned Sarah. Sarah had been my roommate sophomore year, before she transferred out suddenly in the middle of spring semester. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone one Tuesday morning. Her side of the room emptied like she'd never been there at all. I'd asked around, but no one seemed to know anything. Or if they did, they weren't talking. Eventually, I stopped asking. The email said she'd be there. It said she was looking forward to seeing me, specifically. That felt strange, because we hadn't been particularly close. Just two people assigned to share a space who got along well enough. But something in my chest tightened when I read her name. Some old instinct I couldn't quite place. I told myself I was curious. I told myself it would be nice to catch up, see how everyone turned out, do the whole nostalgia thing. But driving to campus that Saturday afternoon, hands tight on the wheel, I knew I was lying to myself. I wanted to know why Sarah left. I wanted to know why she never said goodbye. The reunion was held in the old student center, the same building where we used to get coffee between classes and waste hours pretending to study. It looked smaller now, shabbier. The paint was peeling near the windows. The furniture was the same mismatched, donated stuff from when we were students, only more worn. There were maybe 30 people there when I arrived, standing in awkward clusters with name tags and plastic cups of wine. I didn't recognize most of them at first. 15 years does that. Faces get heavier or thinner, hair changes, the way people carry themselves shifts. But then someone laughed across the room, and I knew exactly who it was before I even turned. Michael. He'd lived on our floor freshman year, still had the same loud, too confident laugh that used to echo down the hallway at 2 a.m. I grabbed a name tag and wrote my name slowly, buying time, scanning the room for Sarah. I didn't see her, just a mix of vaguely familiar faces, and a few I was sure I'd never seen before in my life. That happened at these things, I figured. People remembered college differently, remembered being closer to certain groups than they actually were. Michael spotted me and waved, started making his way over. I smiled and waved back, already bracing for the conversation. The "where are you now" and "what are you doing" and "remember when?" But before he reached me, someone touched my elbow. I turned. It was a woman I didn't recognize, maybe mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a plain black dress that seemed too formal for the occasion. She wasn't wearing a name tag. "You're here for Sarah," she said, not a question. I blinked. I'm here for the reunion, but yeah, the email mentioned she'd be here. The woman's expression didn't change. "She wants to see you. She's upstairs." Upstairs? The second floor of the student center had been closed for renovations our entire time at school. Asbestos, someone had said, or maybe structural problems. The doors had always been chained. "Room 212, the woman said. "She's waiting." Before I could ask anything else, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd so quickly I lost sight of her. I stood there for a moment, cup of wine in hand, feeling stupid. Michael was still making his way toward me, stopping to talk to someone else. I could have waited, could have done the normal thing and socialized, but my feet were already moving toward the stairwell. The door to the stairs wasn't chained anymore. It was propped open with a doorstop,
The kind you'd use for a room you expected people to go in and out of. The stairwell was dark.
The lights were off, or maybe they just didn't work. I used my phone flashlight and started climbing. The second-floor hallway was long and narrow, doors on either side, most of them closed. The air smelled stale, like it hadn't been circulated in years. My footsteps echoed too loud on the tile floor. Room 212 was at the end of the hall, door slightly ajar, a thin line of light coming from inside. I stopped a few feet away. Something felt wrong. Not danger wrong, just off. Like walking into a room and knowing someone had just been talking about you. I should have gone back downstairs. I should have found Michael, or literally anyone else, and asked if they knew what was going on. Instead, I pushed the door open. The room was small, probably an old office. There was a desk, a chair, a filing cabinet in the corner, and Sarah, sitting in the chair, facing the door like she'd been waiting. She looked almost exactly the same. Same straight blonde hair, same angular face, same way of sitting with her hands folded in her lap. She smiled when she saw me. "You came," she said. "The email said you'd be here." I stayed in the doorway. "What's going on? Why are you up here?" "I wanted to talk to you privately. I wanted to explain why I left." I felt something cold move through my chest. "Okay." Sarah stood up slowly. "Do you remember the week before I transferred? Do you remember what happened?" I tried to think back. 15 years was a long time. I remembered her packing, remembered the room being half empty, but the days before that were blurry. We'd both been busy with midterms. I'd barely seen her. "Not really," I admitted. "We had a conversation," Sarah said.
Late at night. You were half asleep, but we talked for almost an hour. I told you something, and you told me I should leave. You said it wasn't safe. My skin prickled. I had no memory of this, none at all. What did you tell me? Sarah's smile didn't change. That I'd found something in the basement of our dorm, a room that wasn't on any of the floor plans. That there were photos inside, Polaroids, dozens of them. She paused and the silence stretched too long. Pictures of students sleeping in their rooms. Pictures of us. The cold feeling spread through my chest, down into my stomach. I don't remember any of this. I know, Sarah said softly. That's why I needed to see you, to remind you. Because you were in those photos too. And after I left, I kept checking in, not obviously, just enough to make sure you were okay. She took a step closer. And you were. You graduated. You moved on. You forgot. I don't understand what you're telling me. Sarah walked closer, close enough that I could see her eyes clearly in the dim light. There was something in them I didn't like. Something too steady, too certain. The photos never stopped. Even after I left, even after you graduated, I still have them. They still come. That's not possible. I brought them, she said. I wanted you to see. I wanted you to understand that leaving doesn't fix it. Distance doesn't fix it. It just continues. She reached into her bag, a plain canvas tote I hadn't noticed before, and pulled out a manila envelope, the kind you'd use for important documents. She held it out to me. I didn't take it. I don't want to see them. You need to, Sarah said. Her voice was still calm, still kind, but there was something underneath it now, something insistent. You need to know that it's still happening, that it never stopped. My hand moved before my brain caught up. Taking the envelope, feeling the weight of it. There were photos inside, I could feel them shifting.
I should have dropped it. I should have left. I opened the envelope. The first photo was of me sleeping in my current apartment, in my current bed, taken from the angle of my bedroom doorway. I recognized the blue pillowcase I'd bought 3 months ago, the book on my nightstand that I was halfway through. The second was from last week, me sitting on my couch, watching television unaware. Same shirt I'd worn on Thursday. Same position I always sat in, legs curled under me.
The third was from this morning, getting dressed, the camera positioned somewhere near my closet. I could see the clothes I'd considered and rejected on the bed behind me. There were dozens more. Different angles, different rooms, different days. All recent. All me. Some were taken through windows, some from inside my apartment. Angles that made no sense unless someone had been standing in my bedroom, my bathroom, my kitchen. I looked up at Sarah. "How did you get these?" "I didn't take them," she said. "They come to me, in the mail. No return address. They've been coming for 15 years, yours and mine. Sometimes others from our floor, but mostly us." "Who's sending them?" "I don't know." For the first time, her expression shifted, something like fear crossing her face. "I tried to find out. I went to the police twice, moved 4 times, changed my name once. Nothing stops them. They always find me." She paused. "They always find you." I shoved the photos back into the envelope, my hands shaking. "This is insane. This is illegal. We need to go to the police right now." "I told you. I already tried. They can't help. There's never any evidence except the photos, and those aren't enough. No fingerprints, no DNA, no way to trace them." "Then why did you bring me up here? Why show me this?" Sarah sat back down in the chair, her hands folding in her lap again, that same careful posture. "Because I wanted to see your face when you realized. I wanted to see if you'd remember what I remembered. If you'd feel what I've been feeling all these years." "Feel what?" "That we're still being watched. That we never left that place. Not really. That whoever took those first photos in college is still out there. Still watching. Still waiting for something." The room felt smaller suddenly. The walls too close. I backed toward the door. "I'm leaving. I'm going to the police myself, and I'm going to figure this out." "You won't," Sarah said quietly. "You'll try for a while, and then you'll convince yourself it stopped, that it was a prank or a misunderstanding. You'll throw away the photos and stop checking your locks and tell yourself I was lying or disturbed." She stood again. "That's what you did last time." Where are you watching from? And are you watching alone? Subscribe and stay. Last time? I showed you photos before, 15 years ago in our dorm room. You looked at them for maybe 10 seconds and then handed them back and said you didn't want to be involved. You said I should leave if I was scared, but you weren't going to let it ruin your semester. Sarah's voice was getting quieter, but somehow more intense. "So I left. And you forgot. You forgot the conversation, forgot the photos, forgot everything except that I transferred." I shook my head. "That didn't happen." "It did." Sarah took a step toward me. "And when you leave here today, you'll forget again. You'll throw away those photos or convince yourself they're fake. And in another 15 years, maybe I'll reach out again. Or maybe I won't." She was close now, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something floral and old-fashioned. "Maybe by then you'll have learned to forget so well that nothing can remind you." "You're wrong," but my voice sounded weak even to me. Sarah smiled,
sad this time. I hope I am. I really do. But I've been watching you try to forget for a long time now. It's what you're good at. It's how you survived. I turned and walked out of the room, down the dark hallway, down the stairs, back into the bright noise of the reunion. Michael grabbed my arm as I passed, saying something about getting a group photo, but I pulled away and kept walking. I got to my car, locked the doors, sat there with the envelope in my lap. I could open it again. I could look at the photos and prove to myself they were real, that this was happening. Or I could drive home and throw the whole thing away and go back to my normal life. My hands were already moving toward the ignition. I told myself I'd deal with it tomorrow. I told myself I'd think about it clearly when I wasn't so shaken. I started the car and drove home.
The envelope sitting on the passenger seat. The drive took 40 minutes, long enough for my breathing to return to normal, long enough for the sharp edges of panic to dull into something manageable. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd almost convinced myself that Sarah had manipulated them somehow, that she'd been disturbed, unstable, that the whole thing was some kind of delayed breakdown. People did that sometimes, became obsessed with old roommates, manufactured drama where none existed. It was sad, really. I hoped she'd get help. I brought the envelope inside and set it on my kitchen counter. I'd look through them one more time, I decided, just to be sure, just to confirm what I already suspected, that they were fake, that Sarah needed professional help, that I'd dodged getting pulled into something unhealthy.
But when I opened the envelope, it was empty. I turned it upside down and shook it. Nothing. I checked the floor, the counter, went back out to my car and searched the seats. Nothing. The photos were gone, like they'd never existed. I stood in my kitchen for a long time trying to remember exactly what I'd seen. The details were already fuzzy. My bedroom, I thought, my couch. But maybe I'd imagined the specifics. Maybe the stress of the reunion, of seeing Sarah after so long, had made me see things that weren't there. Maybe the envelope had been empty all along and I'd just assumed there were photos inside because she'd told me there were. The mind does that, fills in gaps, creates false memories based on suggestion. I threw the envelope away and poured myself a drink. That night I slept fine.
I didn't think about Sarah, or the photos, or the room in the student center. And when I woke up the next morning, I barely remembered the reunion at all. Just a vague sense that it had been awkward and I'd left early. I went about my Sunday routine. Coffee, shower, laundry, grocery shopping, normal things, comfortable things. It was only 3 days later, taking out the recycling, that I found the Polaroid. It was stuck to the bottom of the bin, face down, like someone had dropped it there. I almost didn't pick it up, but something made me turn it over. It was me, asleep in my bed, taken last night. Same angle as something I couldn't quite remember, from the doorway. And in the bottom corner, written in neat handwriting I didn't recognize, were 4 words. See you next reunion. I stared at it for a long time, my brain trying to process what I was seeing, trying to fit it into some logical explanation. Someone was in my apartment. Someone had taken this photo while I was sleeping. Someone had access to my home. Then, slowly, carefully, I walked back inside, locked every door and window, sat down at my kitchen table. I tried to remember what Sarah had told me. The details were slippery, just out of reach. Something about photos, something about forgetting, something about how it never stops. But the harder I tried to remember, the more it faded, until all I had left was the Polaroid in my hand and a sick feeling in my stomach.
a feeling that I'd had this exact same thought before. I put the photo in a drawer and told myself I'd deal with it later. I'd call the police. I'd get my locks changed. I'd install cameras. But first, I needed to think. First, I needed to calm down and approach this rationally. By evening, I'd forgotten which drawer I'd put it in. By the next morning, I'd forgotten the photo entirely. I went to work, came home, made dinner, watched television, went to bed. Normal life, normal routine. Except sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night with a feeling that someone had just left my room, that the air was still moving from their passage, that if I turned on the light fast enough, I'd catch them. But I never turned on the light fast enough. And sometimes, going through my mail, I'd find an envelope I didn't remember receiving. Manila, the right size for photos. And I'd hold it for a moment, feeling the weight of it, feeling something cold in my chest. Then I'd throw it away unopened, because whatever was inside, I didn't want to know.
3 months after the reunion, I got another email. Same format as before. Personal. Mentioning specific people. Mentioning Sarah. This time it said there was something important she needed to tell me. That it was urgent. That I needed to call her as soon as possible. I deleted it without reading past the first few lines. Whatever Sarah's issues were, I didn't want to be part of them. I had my own life, my own problems. 6 months after that, I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. I stood in the hallway for 5 minutes, trying to remember if I'd locked it that morning. I always locked it. I was certain I'd locked it. But maybe I'd been distracted. Maybe I'd forgotten. It happened sometimes. I went inside. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was missing. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. Except on my kitchen counter,
There was a Polaroid I didn't remember putting there. Me, sleeping. Last night. I picked it up, and the moment my fingers touched it, I remembered. Not everything, just fragments. Sarah's face in that dim room. The envelope. The words, "It never stops." And I remembered that this had happened before, not just at the reunion, not just in college, before that. I sat down hard on one of my kitchen chairs, the Polaroid trembling in my hand. I tried to think back further. High school, middle school, childhood. How far back did this go? And as I sat there, another memory surfaced. Hazy and uncertain, but there. Being 7 or 8 years old, finding a photo tucked into my backpack. Me asleep in my childhood bedroom. Showing it to my mother. Her face going pale. Her taking it from me, telling me it was probably just a prank from one of my friends. Telling me to forget about it. And I had. I'd forgotten completely. Until now. I stood up, walked to my junk drawer, and started pulling things out. Old receipts, rubber bands, spare keys, takeout menus. And there, at the bottom, a small stack of Polaroids held together with a rubber band. I didn't remember putting them there. I removed the rubber band with shaking hands and spread them out on the counter. Dozens of them, different ages, different apartments, different beds, but all the same angle, all the same perspective. Someone standing in my doorway, watching me sleep. For years, for decades, for my entire life. I grabbed my phone, started to dial 911, then stopped. What would I tell them? That someone had been taking photos of me sleeping for 30 years, and I'd just now remembered. That the photos appeared and disappeared. That I couldn't remember where they came from or when I'd received them. They'd think I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. I put the phone down and stared at the photos. There had to be a pattern. There had to be something that would tell me who was doing this. But the more I looked, the less I saw. Just me sleeping, unaware, over and over and over. And then I noticed something in one of the older photos, the one that looked like it had been taken when I was in college. There was a reflection in the window behind my bed, faint, almost invisible, but there, a figure. Too blurry to make out details, but definitely a person, holding a camera.
I grabbed a magnifying glass from another drawer and held it over the photo.
The figure became slightly clearer, but not much. Average height, dark clothing, face obscured by the camera. But there was something on their shirt, a patch or a logo. I squinted, trying to make it out. It looked like a name tag, the kind employees wear. My hands went cold. I flipped through the other photos, looking for more reflections, more details I'd missed. And I found them. Small things, insignificant things. In one photo, a maintenance cart visible in the hallway outside my dorm room. In another, taken in my first apartment, a key ring hanging from the doorknob, the kind building staff use. In another, from just a few years ago, a work order clipboard barely visible at the edge of the frame. Whoever was taking these photos had access, legal access,
To everywhere I'd ever lived.
maintenance, management, building staff, people I'd let into my home, people I'd smiled at in hallways, people who had keys, people who were supposed to be trustworthy. I thought about my current apartment building, the maintenance man who'd fixed my sink last month, the property manager who'd done the walkthrough when I'd moved in, the cleaning staff I'd see sometimes in the halls. Any of them. All of them. How would I ever know? I gathered up all the photos and shoved them into a Ziploc bag. Then I grabbed my laptop and started searching. Sarah's name, our college, news articles. If this had been happening to me, it had been happening to her. And maybe to others. Maybe someone had reported it. Maybe there was a record. I searched for hours, found nothing. Just normal alumni updates and fundraising pages.
Then I tried searching for unsolved cases.
Strange incidents. Anything connected to our school. And I found something. A blog post. 10 years old. Written by someone who'd graduated the same year as Sarah and me. They described finding photos in their mailbox. Photos of them sleeping. They'd gone to the police, filed a report. Nothing had come of it. The post ended with a single line. If this is happening to you too, you're not alone, but you're also not safe. There were comments, dozens of them. People saying it had happened to them. People from different schools, different cities, different states. All describing the same thing. Photos appearing, police unable to help, a growing sense of being watched. And then, about halfway down, a comment that made my blood stop. I figured out who it was. Took me 8 years, but I found him.
Building maintenance supervisor. Had access to hundreds of units across 4 states. Kept the photos in a storage unit. Police found over 10,000 images when they raided it. But he's not the only one. There are more. They share information. They trade access. They help each other. The comment was from 6 years ago. I kept reading. Conviction won't stop it. Someone else will take over. Someone else already has. This doesn't end. You just learn to live with it. Or you don't. I closed my laptop, sat there in the dark. The photos spread out in front of me. This wasn't about Sarah. This wasn't about college. This was bigger, older, more organized. And I was just one name in a list that probably numbered in the thousands. I thought about moving again, changing my name again. But Sarah had done that. It hadn't helped. They always found her. They always found me. Because we let them in. We had to. We needed maintenance when pipes burst. We needed landlords to sign leases.
We needed access to be granted. And once it was granted, it never really went away. I picked up my phone again. This time, I called Sarah. I didn't know if she'd answer. Didn't know if the number from the reunion email would still work. It rang 4 times. Then her voice. "I was wondering when you'd call." "I remember," I said. "Not everything, but enough." "That's more than usual," Sarah said. She sounded tired. "You normally make it about a week before you forget completely." "This has happened before? Me calling you?" "3 times. After you find the photos, you always call. We always have this conversation. Then you forget again." I looked at the Polaroids on my counter.
I don't want to forget this time.
"You will. You always do. It's easier that way." "Easier than what?"
Sarah was quiet for a long moment.
"Easier than living with the knowledge that you're never alone, that you'll never be alone, that every place you've ever slept, someone else was there too, watching. There has to be something we can do." "There isn't. I've tried everything. So have hundreds of other people. The ones doing this, they're careful. They're patient. They know we'll forget. They count on it." "Then why did you bring me to the reunion? Why show me the photos if I'm just going to forget?" "Because I needed to tell someone. Even if you forget, even if it doesn't matter, I needed to say it out loud. That this is real. That I'm not crazy. That it's still happening." I heard her breath hitch, like she was crying. "And because I wanted you to know that you're not alone in this. Even if you forget, even if we never speak again, you're not alone." I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you in college." "You did believe me. You just chose to forget. Same thing you'll do now." She was right. I could already feel it happening. The edges of the conversation getting fuzzy, the details slipping away. "Sarah," I said, "is there any way to make it stop? Even just for a little while?" "Cameras," she said. "Put cameras in your apartment, not connected to the internet, just recording. You won't stop them from coming in, but you'll have proof. You'll be able to see their faces." "And then what?" "And then you'll know. You'll know who to avoid, who to never let in again. It won't stop it completely, but it might slow it down." "Have you done that?" "Yes, 3 years ago. I've got footage of 4 different people, different times, different days, all with legitimate access to my building." "Did you go to the police?" "Yes. They said it wasn't enough. The people claimed they were doing routine checks, that they didn't take any photos. Without catching them in the act, there's nothing to charge them with." I felt something break inside my chest. "So we just live with it." "We just live with it," Sarah agreed. "Or we don't. Some people can't. Some people end up doing things I won't talk about, things that make the watching stop permanently." I understood what she meant. I'm not going to do that. Good, neither am I. But the option's always there. The knowledge that we could make it stop if we really wanted to. We sat in silence for a moment. 2 people connected by something terrible.
Something we both wished we could unknow.
"I should let you go," Sarah finally said. "You'll forget this conversation by tomorrow. But I want you to know that I'm glad you came to the reunion. I'm glad I got to see you, even if it doesn't matter in the long run." "It matters," I said. Maybe for tonight it does." She hung up,
I sat there for a long time, phone in my hand, photos on the counter. Then I stood up and started making a list. Camera systems, installation instructions, storage options. I'd remember this. I'd fight to remember this. I went online and ordered cameras immediately. 2 for the bedroom, 1 for the living room, 1 for the front door. Overnight shipping. I'd install them tomorrow. I'd document everything. I'd keep records. I'd make it impossible to forget. But even as I clicked confirm on the order, I could feel it slipping, the urgency fading. A voice in my head saying I was overreacting, that I was being paranoid, that maybe I should cancel the order, save the money, stop being ridiculous. By the time I went to bed, I'd convinced myself I'd think about it more clearly in the morning. Maybe I didn't need cameras. Maybe I just needed better locks. Maybe I just needed to stop letting Sarah's paranoia infect me. By morning, I'd forgotten I'd ordered anything at all. When the cameras arrived 2 days later, I stared at the box on my doorstep for a full minute, confused about what I'd bought and why. I brought them inside, opened the box, looked at the equipment. Then I closed the box and put it in my closet. I'd deal with it later. When I had time. When I wasn't so busy. The box sat in my closet for 3 months, and during those 3 months, the photos kept coming. Not often, just occasionally, just enough to maintain a presence. I'd find them in strange places, between the pages of books I was reading, in coat pockets, once folded inside my passport. Each time I found one, I'd remember for a few hours. The reunion, Sarah, the conversation, the realization that this had been happening my entire life. And each time, within a day or two, the memory would fade, until all I had left was a vague sense of unease, a feeling that something wasn't right, but nothing concrete enough to act on. This went on for 2 years. 2 years of finding photos and forgetting them. 2 years of brief moments of clarity followed by comfortable denial. 2 years of living with the knowledge buried so deep I could almost pretend it wasn't there. Until the night I woke up and someone was standing in my doorway. Not a dream, not a shadow, a person. I froze, completely still, every muscle locked, my breath stopped in my throat. The figure didn't move either, just stood there, watching. In their hands, I could see the outline of a camera. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then I heard the soft click of a shutter. The flash didn't go off. Polaroids don't need flash if there's enough ambient light. The figure turned and walked away, quiet footsteps down my hallway, the soft sound of my front door opening and closing. I lay there for another 10 minutes before I could move. When I finally did, I got up, turned on every light, and checked every room. Nothing. No sign anyone had been there. The door was locked from the inside. The windows were secure. But on my kitchen counter, still developing, was a fresh Polaroid. Me, in bed, asleep, taken 30 seconds ago. I picked it up with shaking hands and watched my own image slowly appear on the film. Watched myself sleeping, unaware, vulnerable. And for the first time, I didn't let myself forget. I took the photo and I taped it to my bathroom mirror, where I'd see it every single day, where I couldn't ignore it or lose it or convince myself it wasn't real. Then I went to my closet, got the cameras, and spent the next 4 hours installing them. Every angle, every entrance, every room. When I was done, I sat at my kitchen table and waited for the memory to fade.
for my brain to do what it always did and smooth over the trauma with comfortable explanations. But it didn't come.
Maybe because I'd actually seen them this time. Maybe because the fear was too fresh. Maybe because I'd finally hit some kind of threshold. Whatever the reason, I remembered. And I kept remembering. For 3 days, I barely slept. I watched the camera footage obsessively. I checked and rechecked every lock. I jumped at every sound. On the 4th day, I saw him. 3:15 in the morning, my bedroom door opening. A man walking in. Average build, wearing a maintenance uniform. Face clearly visible. It was Tom, the building superintendent, the man who'd helped me move in 2 years ago, who'd fixed my disposal last month, who I'd chatted with in the lobby dozens of times. He walked to the foot of my bed, stood there for almost 2 minutes, just watching. Then he took out a camera and took a photo. The flash from my security camera didn't even make him flinch. He knew they were there. He didn't care. He looked directly at the camera, smiled, and left. I sat there watching the footage over and over, watching him smile at the camera, watching him leave like he had every right to be there. Because he did have every right. He had keys, he had access. He had permission to enter units for maintenance and emergencies. Who was going to question the superintendent entering an apartment at 3 in the morning? He could say he was checking a water leak, investigating a noise complaint, responding to a fire alarm. I had him on camera, and it didn't matter. I took the footage to the police anyway. Spent 4 hours at the station explaining everything. Showed them the photos, showed them the video. They were sympathetic. They said they'd talk to him. They said they'd open an investigation. 2 weeks later, they called and said there wasn't enough evidence to press charges. Tom claimed he'd received a maintenance request about a possible gas leak and had been checking the apartment. He denied taking any photos, said the camera in his hand was his personal phone, and he'd been checking a text message. Without catching him actually taking the photo, without proof he'd distributed the images, there was nothing they could do. They suggested I get a restraining order, maybe sue the building management for inadequate security protocols, both of which would require me to move, to find a new place, to start over, where someone else with keys would have access, where the pattern would just begin again. I thanked them for their time and left. That night, I got another email from Sarah. Just 2 words. I know. I called her. She answered on the first ring. You saw him, she said. Yes. And the police couldn't help. No. Now you understand, Sarah said quietly. Now you know why I've been trying to forget for 15 years. I looked at the camera footage pulled up on my laptop, Tom's face frozen in a smile. What do we do? We don't do anything. There's nothing to do. We just live with it. We install cameras so we know when they're there. We document everything so we don't forget. And we wait. Wait for what? For them to get sloppy, for the law to change, for someone in power to care enough to actually do something, for them to die. I don't know. We just wait. I thought about spending the next 30 years like this, always watched, always documented, always waiting. I can't do that, I said. Then you'll forget again, Sarah said. Your brain will protect you the only way it knows how. You'll convince yourself the cameras are wrong, that Tom had a legitimate reason, that the photos are fake. Within a month, you'll barely remember this conversation. No, I won't let that happen. You think the others didn't say that? You think I didn't say that? It's not about will, it's about survival. Your mind knows you can't live with this knowledge every single day. So it buries it, whether you want it to or not. I looked at the photo still taped to my bathroom mirror. Then I'll keep reminding myself every single day. I'll make it impossible to forget. Sarah laughed, but it sounded sad. Good luck. I hope you manage it. I really do. But I've been trying to stay angry, stay vigilant, for 15 years. And some mornings I wake up and I don't remember why I have 17 locks on my door. Some mornings I think about taking down the cameras because they feel excessive. The brain wants to forget. Eventually, you let it. We talked for another hour, sharing strategies, comparing notes. Two people trying to hold on to a reality that everyone around us denied or dismissed or couldn't comprehend. When we finally hung up, I felt more alone than I ever had, because she was right. I could already feel it starting, the sharp edges of fear dulling, the certainty wavering, my brain offering me comfortable explanations, easy outs. So I did the only thing I could think of. I wrote it all down. Everything. Every detail, every photo, every moment of clarity. I wrote it like I was explaining it to myself in the future, to the version of me who would inevitably forget. I printed it out, 50 pages, single-spaced. I put copies everywhere, in my car, at my office, in my gym bag. I emailed it to myself with a subject line I'd have to open. I set calendar reminders to read it weekly. I made forgetting as difficult as possible. And for a while, it worked. For 6 months, I stayed vigilant. I read my own account every week. I watched the camera footage. I documented every new photo. I stayed angry. But Sarah was right about what happens to the mind under sustained stress. It finds ways to cope, to rationalize, to diminish. The weekly readings became every other week, then monthly, then only when I found a new photo. The camera footage sat unwatched. What was the point of confirming what I already knew? The photos still came, but I stopped counting them, stopped trying to find patterns. And slowly, without even realizing it, I started to forget. Not the facts. I could still recite them if asked. But the emotional weight, the constant fear, the sense of violation, it faded. Until one day I realized I hadn't checked the cameras in 3 months, hadn't read my own account in twice that long. I was learning to live with it, just like Sarah said I would. And the worst part was how much easier everything became once I stopped fighting. I slept better, worked better, smiled more, had energy for things I'd neglected, all because I'd allowed myself to forget just enough to function. Last week, I got another email about a reunion, 20 years this time. Sarah's name was in it again. Same format, same personal touch. I read it 3 times, felt that familiar tightness in my chest. Then I archived it and went back to my normal day. I probably won't go. There's no point. Sarah will tell me the same things, show me the same evidence. I'll remember for a few days or weeks or months, then I'll forget again. Because that's what we do. That's what we have to do. We forget the things we can't change. We forget the violations we can't prevent. We forget the truth that makes normal life impossible. And somewhere in buildings across the country, people with keys and cameras and access are counting on exactly that. They're counting on our ability to rationalize, to minimize, to move on. They're counting on the fact that the human mind can only sustain horror for so long before it finds a way to bury it. They're counting on us forgetting. And they're right. Tonight, I'll go to sleep in my apartment.
The cameras will record someone entering with a key around 3 in the morning. They'll stand at the foot of my bed and take a photo.
Tomorrow morning I might check the footage. I might not. Either way, by tomorrow afternoon, I'll have convinced myself it doesn't matter, that there's nothing I can do, that it's just part of life now. And by next week, I'll barely remember it happened at all. Because the alternative is living in constant fear for the rest of my life. And I can't do that. None of us can. So we forget. And they know we forget. And the photos keep coming. And we keep pretending they don't. Until the day we die, there will be documentation of our most vulnerable moments. Proof that we were never alone. Evidence that privacy was always an illusion. But we won't think about that.
We'll think about work and bills and what to make for dinner. We'll think about anything except the fact that tonight, while we sleep, someone will be watching. Someone will always be watching. And tomorrow, we'll forget. We always forget.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more stories.